Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Happy Thursday to you, 19th day of December 2024. Seth Harp on Sports in for the QB here on this Thursday. Joining me throughout the course of the program today, Mr. Brent Beaird, as we look ahead to what is going to be a jam-packed weekend when it comes to football. You hear that phrase a lot. It's hyperbole, but it's actually the case this weekend with three college football games Saturday. Of course, the primetime sucker Friday night, tomorrow night, between Notre Dame and Indiana, and of course, the Florida Gators taking on the Tulane Green Wave in the Gasparilla Bowl down in Tampa. So we're going to get to that coming up here, and also some transfer portal news with Brent. A quick reminder to everybody that PodUp with Matthews in the morning, always coming to you live from the Crime Prevention Security System home studios. Large enough to serve you, and of course, small enough to care. Facebook Live questions, you can cook them up courtesy of Meldon Law, the only official injury law firm partner of the Florida Gators. And YouTube questions, a service of Quality Printing. Quality Printing, yeah, Quality Printing, that's a good company too, but this is Quality Plumbing here this go around. Residential and commercial plumbing services and emergency repair since 1984. Their name says it all. They put me at ease about 8 months ago when my toilet broke in my bathroom. That was Super Bowl week too. I guess it's more than 6-7 months ago. Also, you got some questions for us courtesy of Titan MRI. Fire them away in the Titan MRI text line 352-353-7465. That's 352-353-7465. All right, Brent Beaird. Here we are. I mean, this is what people have wanted for at least a decade. I remember when we had the first college football playoff and people were furious that the defending champ Florida State Seminoles were dropping in seeding, even though they remained unbeaten. Then they played Oregon, who got after they absolutely demolished Florida State in Jameis Winston that night. It's hard to believe that that was, 11 years ago, 10 years ago now. And I bring this up for this question. Here we are, a decade later. We've gone from 4 to 12, and Oregon was at the top. Oregon's at the top again, sitting there, hopefully to have a better result, at least from the Ducks fans' perspective this go-around. Before we get into everything that's going to take place and everything that's going to go on this weekend, welcome in, Brent. The evolution of this sport the last 15 years, the BCS, the 4-team, to now, what do you make of where we are today, the landscape on the field before we get to the off-the-field stuff?
The pace to where we've got to where we are now has just been staggering. I mean, Seth, couldn't you make the debate that we have had more change in the last, I would say the last even 5 years than we have than we have maybe in the previous 50. So some of it's good, some of it's not. I mean, for those of us who wanted and have wanted a true playoff for, I would say, 10, 20, 30 years, we can rejoice in what's going on this weekend. Now, we will also not be satisfied with just 12 because we're going to 14 or 16 in 2026. A lot of that will be determined over the next few months, but it is tremendous that we've got this. And now there are going to be changes here. I think the buys are going away in 2026. I think they're probably just going to almost have a basketball bracket from 1 to 16. Those are some of the things that you hear But look, the other thing that we're discussing here, and I saw where you made some discussion of this on Harp on Sports in your podcast. But Seth, in the discussion we've had this week, we've waited so long for a playoff. We're excited for the playoff. When it gets here on Friday and Saturday, it's going to take over and it will be okay. But the problem is the week leading up the playoff, I don't know about you, but as far as what we have done probably 70% portal and about 30% playoff. And Seth, that's got to be changed, and frankly, sooner than later, correct?
Yeah, could you imagine NFL free agency in January during the playoffs?
No.
That's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is, and you're right. And Brent, I'm not a fan of we have to force this, but you can create rules and guidelines to stop it. You say, well, coaches leave, just like the coach at Marshall did, that led to a collapse there, and then they pull out of what was it, the bowl game with Army, the Independence Bowl, I believe it was, that led to this domino effect. Yeah, these things happen. It's been my idea from the beginning that scholarships, you get your scholarships, but every player, they've talked about this. Politicians have talked about this. Brent, they call it like a living wage, where every American gets $1,000 a month, no matter what. Like it, love it, whatever. I would apply that to college football, where every player gets a salary or a basis for playing. However, you have to sign a 2-year contract. And how you stop that, Brent, is that at the end of the year, like what we're dealing with right now, if you decide to opt out, you have to sit out 2 years. Remember the old rule where if you could transfer and sit out a year, but if you transferred within the conference, you had to sit out 2. That's just 15 years ago we had that rule.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're going to pay you, but it's got to be a little give and take. And we're going to give you 2-year contracts. You sign them. Just like everybody else in life, you sign contracts. That's where you are. NFL teams, they draft you. You may not like it, but it's a contract. You commit to this program. And now you can do things where you let guys out of contracts early if the head coach gets fired or leaves. You can create things like that. I'm okay with that. But when you've got teams that have chances, Arizona State, what do they got, like 3 or 4 guys in this sucker, Brent? And they're not only a national title contender, they've got to bye. They're one win away from the Final Four of this. So you make contracts, and also something, Brett, that I don't know if it'll help, but what we have seen is a curbing of the opting out to go to the NFL draft. We've seen a little bit of that drop. The only other thing that I was thinking here is if you really want to take the next step, then the NFL could put something in place with college where if you get drafted in the first 4 rounds, you got to go. If you get drafted in rounds 5, 6, or 7, kind of like baseball, you can come back to college if you don't like your situation.
Look, I love
something.
That. I saw this on Twitter this morning, and it's amazing to think about this. And this dovetails with what you're saying. The other big thing most people aren't talking about, many college football and basketball players are now making more in college than they would in the pros. Now this is amazing. Every starting SEC quarterback makes more this year than Brock Purdy does in year 3 in the NFL as a starter. Now, I'll give Clay Travis credit for that. That's who said it. But to your point, we're seeing the opposite of what we used to see. We're seeing players stay in for bowl games, which certainly makes the bowl people happy. And I think that probably has something to do with the NIL also. But the thing we've got to do with this is we've got to change the calendar. As you said a few minutes ago, it would be absurd to think the NFL is dealing with free agency during the playoffs. And they've got to look at this. They've had a 20-day window that closes like December the 29th or 28th. So, and again, that should not be going on. And may I add one more thing here? This came out overnight. this is a ruling that says JUCO seasons should not be counted against a player's 4 years of eligibility. If people haven't heard this yet, this is what is coming up. It's a ruling by a court today that JUCO athletes who play college sports, get this now, retain all 4 years of NCAA eligibility, even if they play a year or two of junior college football. Georgia has a wide receiver, Kobe Young, that started his college career at Lackawanna College in Pennsylvania. This injunction could open the door for him to return in 2025. So we won't get in the weeds too much with this, but this is just another bit of a layer, Seth, that we've got to deal with that just came up yesterday.
Think about this, and this is what's funny about this, and I don't have a soapbox here, but if I did, I'd be on it. Think about what Brent just said, and then the next time somebody says it should be student athlete, the students first, they basically said that this young man's college career doesn't count at his JUCO. Does that mean his grades don't transfer over either, Brent? If his playing career didn't happen, then
that's a great point.
Your playing career didn't happen at your JUCO. It doesn't count, so your grades don't count either. Everything that you learned, yeah, okay, all right. Well, there are, and it's going to be taking. You're going to have to tweak it. You're going to have to change it. Initially, everybody thought, including me, I'm guilty of this when NIL and these things started. That I thought the transfer portal idea was a neat idea. Yeah. Where you can leave, you can go, you can transfer. The ruling eligibility immediately. Was that Justin Fields that really kicked that off? That really, I'm trying to think who really changed the dynamic. It wasn't Justin Fields, but changed the dynamic of that, where they didn't want to sit out. And I get that. Then you had guys leaving in the middle of the year at times, so they could at least play half the next year at their right place. So I get it, but Brett's right. The window needs to change. And you're changing. So what do we have, like 13 or 14 head coaching vacancies, and the portal's open at the same time as Wake Forest is trying to hire a football coach? And
yes.
I just don't, Brett, I'm okay with opening this sucker up right when you get to the final two. After the semifinals, open it up if you really want to do it that way. And I know, the semester, we got to worry about the kids in school. Come on. You got guys that enroll early. You got guys that leave late. You got, as Brent just said, you got JUCO things that don't count. Football, once you take a step back and realize football's different than the other sports and say to yourself, that's okay. How do we adjust it? If people are really concerned, then there's things that need to be fixed and tweaked. And again, give and take. Make them employees. Make them sign contracts. They have to abide by those contracts. If they opt out of those contracts, you can opt out. Look, you can still quit. But you got to sit out 2 years.
And that's coming. It's coming quickly. The money they're getting from the House versus the Nation contract is going to come into play over the next few months. To what Seth is saying, everybody's going to get about, and we may be off a little bit on this, like $21 million, and determine how to disperse that. The other thing Seth said, which frankly is going to be a good thing. There's some things I don't like about it, but it would help, would be the contract situation. Yeah. What we would know what everybody would make, that there would be a tier system. I mean, your quarterback's going to play yet more than your offensive lineman, obviously. But see, the transfer portal right now is going from the sublime to the ridiculous. When we've got a Penn State team that's in the playoffs, that their backup quarterback is in the portal. So what they need to be sure that doesn't happen here is that they've got to keep Drew Lallar, their quarterback, healthy. I mean, they'll have a plan for a backup quarterback, but Seth, when we're having that happen during the playoffs, that is not the original intent of the portal.
No, and adjustments and tweaks need to take place. Brent Beaird, Seth Harp with you here on this Thursday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning, brought to you in part by Comfort Temp Heating and Air, your number one local HVAC company. Professional experienced technicians keep you informed throughout the entire project. Check them out, comforttemp.com. That's comforttemp.com. Comfort Temp Heating and Air. Comfort is their business. Peace of mind is the promise. Also, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, a service of Electronics World, integration design specialist for smart home automation entertainment, affordable local installation service and support, electronicsworld.net. Alabama, something that I thought, Brent, that I wanted to ask you. I know we got some Heisman questions in here. People talking about Dallas Wilson wanting out of his financial affidavit at Oregon. But I want to ask you about Alabama. The fact that, here is the team that's had the number one recruiting class in the last 20 years, 80% of the time?
Yeah.
85% of the time?
Them in Georgia, yes.
Yeah, it just talent and just Nick Saban just could open up the door and here we go. Not to say he didn't battle for it because he certainly earned it. Now we're to the point where the athletic department and the head football coach at Alabama, Brent, I saw this last night, are sending out letters, are posting on Instagram, begging the fan base for money because they can't compete. They need more money at Alabama to compete. They can't get the athletes anymore. They can't. Everybody's taking their best players. Please send us money. Brett, this is like a billionaire to me asking regular folks to send $20 because they can't afford to eat anymore. Is this? Did Nick Saban see the writing on the wall here? What do you make, Brent, that 12 months after having Michigan on the ropes in the Orange or the Rose Bowl, chance to win another national title, Alabama's begging for its fan base to send money like it's a telethon?
That tells you something about the state of the game at this point. That Alabama athletic director Greg Byrne has sent out a letter to the fan base to, okay, guys, we need you to step up and give money so we can stay competitive in the market. Now, Alabama has had probably around 15 players. A lot of these are backups, like Caleb Odom, one of their wide receivers, is just going to Ole Miss. And it's not only going to be Alabama. And the concerning thing about this is, look, Alabama's not bankrupt by any stretch of imagination, but what a lot of these schools are going to be doing is truthfully going to their alumni and their boosters and saying, you need to step up and help us with this. So, and again, the money from the lawsuits coming into play soon, but in the meantime, they've got to bring players in, and they've got to have more. I mean, you would think with schools like in Alabama with these elite reputations over the years, that would not be a problem. But frankly, Seth, it's a problem everywhere. And look, I don't care who is listening to us today, whatever school you're a fan of, your university and your athletic department, probably what, Seth, in some way or another, are going to be doing this. They may do it more subtly than sending out a letter of help. But this is, unfortunately, until we get this with some guardrails, I think we're going to see more and more of what Greg Beaird did, than less and less.
Brent, what it's turned into is it's turned into political fundraising.
Sure.
What
it has.
You are now, this is where being a sports fan kind of burns a little bit, because people talk about how sports and politics don't mix. Fine, we do have former football coaches that are senators, and we had a former Yale baseball player that ended up being president, and Gerald Ford, and we can go up and down the list where they do mix sometimes. But you are in a constant state of fundraising. At least we get through with elections, Brett, in November every 2-4 years, and people go, oh, God, I'm so sick of the ads. I'm so sick of all this money. I'm so sick of this. That's just after 5 or 6 months. It's constant now. It's perpetual.
It
never ends. It's begging for money constantly. I look at it and I sit here and you have 5-star stud All-Americans at Alabama that have great years that look around and go, you know what? Not enough, not enough. And we talk about traditions. Brett, you can make a case. You can make a case now that SMU is as powerful financially in a competitive open market with football players that Alabama is. SMU is, because they've got 5 billion air boosters that can just cut checks. Alabama doesn't have that.
Well, and look, to back up what Seth is saying, and people may have forgotten this, but when SMU joined the ACC, they basically said, look, we want in, we can afford it, and we won't take any money from the league the first few years. Now now Seth, how many schools can do that?
I know, right? The ones in Texas that have oil wells. I try to put this into perspective for people. I was talking to a buddy the other day. I said, imagine the Dallas Cowboys, right? Jerry Jones owns the Cowboys. He's a billionaire. Now his alma mater, Arkansas, has one of the Waltons, Walmart, billionaire. Guy at Tyson Chicken, billionaire. That's how they got John Calipari. Arkansas has the potential to have more money to go after players than the Dallas Cowboys would, because it's just one billionaire in Dallas as opposed to 3 in Arkansas. If that doesn't put the perspective under the microscope on how you need a cap on this, you need dire consequences if you go over the cap. Like, you can go over the cap, but you lose 5 scholarships. Brett, this is going to be ever evolving and ever changing.
It is.
For the next 5 or 6 years, it's just going to have to be that way.
Well, and what it's done too on the field is, and this has been talked about a lot this week, is are we nearing parity in college football? Meaning, when you've got Indiana and you've got SMU, and you can make an argument too for Boise State and Arizona State, who are in the playoffs, and look, a lot of people welcome that. It's teams that we normally wouldn't see. Now, look, when we get to the Final Four, it probably is still going to be your upper echelon elite teams, i.e. Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, maybe. If they beat Tennessee, and I'm not sure that's going to happen. So there's some interesting things that it's done, but for, I think, what you and I are saying and many others is it's just totally out of control. And that, yes, there is an academic end to this because you've got to show some kind of progress toward the degree. But the thing we've got here is you've got guys, Seth, like TJ Finley, if that name sounds familiar. He's a quarterback. TJ Finley just signed with Tulane. TJ Finley has been to LSU, Auburn, Texas State, Western Kentucky, and now Tulane. Can you listen? Can you imagine what his transcript would look like?
I can't imagine going to 5 different stores. Let alone 5 different colleges. It's crazy, man. Look, it's the business that we're in now. And they'll tweak it because schools like Alabama and, Michigan and your higher ups across the board are going to look around at the threat that SMU's and Houston. You forget there's other schools, Baylor, Texas Tech, up and down the board, get some of the power that these have. PodUp with Matthews in the morning with you here on this Thursday, brought to you in part by Miapa Latin Cafe. Discover the ultimate Cuban culinary experience at Miapa Latin Cafe. 5 locations in Gainesville and Alachua. You're never far from the best Cuban food north of Miami. I had a question rolling in here, Brent, asking you how your Heisman final or your Heisman 3 stacked up against the official outcome. I'll let you take that one, baby, because I saw your results and I saw what the final 3 were.
Yeah, and basically it ended up being the count that we had on Saturday night. Travis Hunter, Ashton Genty, and Dylan Gabriel the amazing thing to me about how this ended was, number one, it was closer than I thought it was going to be. And number two, there were in the top 10, this is unbelievable, Seth, there were no SEC players, zero. I don't know if we'll ever see that again. And look, I'm going to throw this out here, and you probably talked about it too on some various platforms, but being a Heisman voter, the discussion now is, with the playoff going into January the 20th, are we actually voting and announcing the Heisman winner too soon? In other words, we've got now, after the regular season, after the championship games, but if you've got, Seth, 3, 4, 5 more games left for the players who may be in the race, should we wait until later to actually do the Heisman vote? I don't know if the Heisman Trust would actually do that. Do we want to keep it as okay, this is the best player for the regular season, including the championship games? I'm curious if you've heard that this week, because it's been a big deal for us as far as what do we do in the future.
I know they pushed it, and it's one of those things. If you do it, then guys. Well, Travis Hunter, exit stage left. Cam Ward, exit stage left.
That's right.
I guess at that point it would be Genty, Gabriel. I'm just trying to think if you didn't vote on it right now.
Yeah.
Benefit Genty more so than anybody would benefit Gabriel. But then again, let's say I don't know. Let's say a Penn State goes to the national championship game. Does the Heisman end up? I guess, Brent, if they do that, does it end up being the college football playoff MVP award?
Well, that's the big discussion, and we've got to be careful about that, because we're going to have players with teams, obviously, as you just mentioned, who are not in the playoffs and frankly aren't even close to the playoffs. So with the tradition they've got, which is a big deal to the Heisman Trust, and the time that they've got to do it, Seth, look, we've learned to say, haven't we, lately, that you never say never to what's going on in college football. But I still think it would take a lot, would it not, to actually move the timing of this award.
Yeah, and I think you could add a postseason award. I don't know what you would call it, but pick a player. I don't know if you want to call it. I try to think of. Well, geez, we got the Maxwell, the Davey O'Brien, the Manning Award. I don't know what you'd want to call it.
Right. Good point.
Have an award that's just for the college football playoff, the most outstanding player. They do that for the NCAA basketball tournament too, right? But that's a little bit different with the Naismith, and you got 68 teams, so it's a little bit different. I know we got time here. I know you got to get going here about 8 or 9 minutes. I'll take a quick, respite here as we look at a couple things. Come back on a couple more questions for Brent, including looking at the opening round of the college football playoff, which starts between Notre Dame and Indiana in South Bend Friday night, tomorrow night. You're listening to PodUp with Matthews in the morning.
Our premium sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Crime Prevention Security System, Titan MRI, Meldon Law, QC Kinetics, Dave & Buster's, UF Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute, JF Hayden Craft Liqueurs, Bishop's Pitmaster Barbecue, Florida Cracker Kitchen, Los Linderos Tequila. Gridiron sponsors are Baker Sporting Goods, Cogent Bank, Comfort Temp, Electronics World, Florida Victorious, Gallo Car Wash, Miapa Latin Cafe, Peachland Dental, Quality Plumbing, Ruse Ogre State Farm, Silverback Concrete, 84 Lumber, Big Mills Cheesesteak, Celebrate Primary Care, Dowling Signs, Gator Bait Media, Gator Dominoes, Ironwood Golf Course, Okido America, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, UF Bookstores, Nest and Wow, MG&A Wealth Management. Watch and listen to us live on Facebook and YouTube. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. To become a sponsor, call my man Freddie at 352-284-3733.
Unleash the Inferno.
With time running out, the head ball coach, Steve Spurrier, shares a play to score the perfect last-minute Christmas gift.
Spurrier's Gridiron gift cards are on sale for 20% off between December 17 and December 24. You can go to spurriers.com and order a digital card or stop by my restaurant in Celebration Point and pick some up today. Use the code GC20 and get 20% off. That's right, 20% off gift cards with code GC20.
Moving along here, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, Thursday, December 18th edition, 2024. Seth Harp, Brent Beaird with you. Of course, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, coming to you live from the Crime Prevention Security Home System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Also, Meldon Law, you want to fire off a Facebook Live question, courtesy of Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law firm partner of the Florida Gators. YouTube questions, courtesy of Quality Plumbing, residential and commercial plumbing services, and emergency report since 1984. Their name says it all. And Titan MRI text line. You can hit that up as well, 352-353-7465, 352-353-7465. Brett, I know you got to get running here. A couple things for you. I think it's interesting. The last time, we had a chat about this, the college football, or at least conference championship weekend. The four major conference championship games and the Mountain West with Boise State, UNLV, every single one of those spreads was under 3.5 points. Opening weekend in college football, every spread is over 7.5. Yeah. What gives here, man?
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Is this more of the underdogs who are just fortunate to be able to get in there? And we don't think they're going to be able to do much. Look, this is a playoff situation, and we just don't know where this thing at this point is going. But Seth, I can tell you this, and with your Big Ten ties, you can appreciate this. The pressure on Ryan Day after losing to Michigan, if they were to get blown out by Tennessee, that there are a lot of people would speculate he may be gone next week. Yeah. If that happened. And you've got a Penn State team with James Franklin who are really struggling to win big games. So I can tell you now that the underdog or not, the pressure is immense on both those coaches and both those programs.
And I know this right now from what I heard. Of course, Notre Dame locked up Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman was being courted by the Bears. And there was worry that if, Ryan Day did get sent packing, Marcus Freeman started for Ohio State. Tressel, I think won a national championship there, right? Or at least he was right there at the beginning of that. So, there was talk that, hey, man, they may go after Marcus Freeman. Notre Dame locks him up. And now the name, Brett, that you're hearing is that if Ohio State, they can lose to Tennessee and still survive. If they get beat, like by double digits at home to Tennessee, he's probably in a lot of trouble. And the name that you're hearing right now is Mike Vrabel. Yeah. He played there. Yeah. He went there. So Mike Vrabel will have a decision because the Bears apparently are extremely interested in him. If you're Mike Vrabel, do you go to the Bears or do you go to Ohio State? So I don't know, but I do know that that's the name that's circulating. Yeah.
Well, and look, whether he actually gets anything or not, Urban Meyer wants to get his name into something too. Yeah. So I'm not saying that he will, and I'm not even saying if that's wise. If I was Urban, I would enjoy my money on Fox and the notoriety there, and just enjoy that. I tell you another guy, Rhett Lashley at SMU. Now, as we talked earlier, the folks in Dallas have the money to keep him there. But it's also going to be pretty fascinating to see what happens and how many offers that he gets with this. So, Seth, there are going to be a lot of interesting things, certainly on the field and off the field, involving these coaches over the next few days.
Do you I was going to see what else we had here. When you look at this, and you look at opening weekend, and of course Friday night, the setup there, and then the 3-game Saturday. One question I had for you, and it's the way this calendar plays out, and I'm good with it. It's the opening weekend. I get it. Brent, the one thing that's a little bizarre for me is, okay, my alma mater, I went to school, Western Michigan, they play the first bowl game. And then, then 5 days later, we have the playoff. And Brett, 60% of the bowl games are taking place after the first round. I guess it's going to take a little while to get used to. What do you think of the playoff taking place essentially the first week of the bowl season? We good with this?
I think we need to see how this is going to play out, and then decide that. But that's a great point. Now, I tell you, the bowl season right now for teams like Florida really are going to take advantage of that, because we've got our bowl behind us. We can get on to the portal and we can get on to other things. So it's actually an advantage for teams like Florida. But to your point, with some of these other bowl games, do they get totally just swamped by the playoffs, or do they end up having a better game than maybe one of the playoff games would be? And
I'm going to come full circle where we started, Brent. If you get beat this weekend, and look, Tennessee or Ohio State's going to get beat. SMU, Penn State, Notre Dame, Indiana. We go up and down the list here, right? Texas, Clemson.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about it with Dabo. But think about this: if you're Tennessee and you lose to Ohio State, then you can start poaching in the portal before anybody else can. You really can turn your entire focus. So actually losing early would benefit you, at least when it comes to, the portal energy that you're in. Because right now, if you're a head football coach, it's tough to make that full court press, to steal a basketball term, effort in the portal if you're playing for a national title. It's tough to do both of those things.
No doubt. But to your point, if you lose early, your recruiting pitch is, look, John Smith, if you come here to our school, we're a playoff school. You can get in the playoffs every year. So that, even though you lose early, that's not going to hurt your recruiting, is it?
No, it's kind of crazy when you think about how this lays out. I know you got to get going here really quick. Do you see any of these road teams winning? I know everybody's a touchdown or more favorite. I think the closest spread right now is Notre Dame, Indiana at 7. Do you see any of the road teams winning this weekend?
I could certainly see Tennessee winning over Ohio State. I mean, Tennessee with Dylan Sampson at running back and that defense. And Seth, as you and I've talked for years, a running game and a good defense travels. And that's reality for Tennessee and Ohio State. And look, you would think Penn State's going to beat SMU at home, but we know about James Franklin in big games. And look, if it's the Seth, do you remember the SMU in the second half against Clemson? Look, they could beat a lot of these teams in the playoffs the way they played at that point. So I'm going to say that maybe Tennessee and SMU, if they're rolling, could certainly win these games. But it's going to be fascinating to see. But I would love to be in the state of Indiana, where you have a lot of ties, just tomorrow, just to soak in the atmosphere of what this is going to be in an unprecedented game. And how ironic is that both those teams would play and be the first playoff game in an expanded 12 team.
Yeah, I can't wait to see. And then you trying to weave that in. I think the Chiefs play the Texans.
They do.
Yeah. I'm going to be in the air for the later half of those a little bit as I fly back to see my family in Indy. But I think it's going to be interesting to see my parents. I'm fascinated because we're in unprecedented territory. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know it's going to be exciting. It's going to be captivating. It's going to make a lot of money. And it's going to be the talk of everything come Monday. And, and all we talk about the portal and how college football is a mess. People still consume it. People still, you can complain about the long line at the Chick-fil-A drive-thru, but you're still in it. And
absolutely. Yes.
It's just the way it goes. All right, man. I know you got to get going. Thank you so much. I know that this will probably be our last. I know you and I will be our last show before Christmas, all that. You, Merry Christmas to you, your entire family, Brent, and I know you'll be back on with Shane next week. But happy holidays to everybody there in the Beard household as well, and take care. And we'll talk to you soon, my friend.
And Seth, as I go, let me say congratulations to Steve Russell. I know you guys had a lot about this on Tuesday. What a tremendous career. And look, you and I both know to be able to do what he did for 27 years is really amazing. So wish him well and a much happy retirement. And Seth, thanks as always for what you do for us.
There we go. Brent Beaird, thank you much. Here on this Thursday edition, PodUp with Matthews in the morning. And of course, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, a service of Silverback Concrete. Silverback Concrete, building firm foundations for generations. You stand on it. We stand by it. Also, Peachland Dentistry, bringing you Brent's appearance today. Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and the surrounding areas. Tomorrow, Peachland Dentistry, JC and the QB's weekend picks. Campus USA Credit Union, bringing you today's day in sports history. Brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. It's been about a year since I bought my car from them. Fantastic. Top notch. Top notch. The rate they gave me was a full percentage point lower than anybody else. Can't thank them enough. That's Campus USA Credit Union. This day in sports history, 44 years ago. 44 years ago, one of 4 movies that have won the Academy Award for Best Picture. It's a sports movie. Debuted Raging Bull 44 years ago. How about that? This day in sports history. This is sports movie history, courtesy of Campus USA Credit Union. I got you for the next 15 minutes, baby. You can fire as many questions my way that you want. Hit me up, baby. Seth Harp, Harp on Sports. I've got my podcast loaded at harponsports.com as well. Something that I was talking about with Dave Clawson leaving Wake Forest, and Wake Forest hiring a new football coach, the guy from Washington State. Okay, nice. But what Wake Forest should have done, what schools like Northwestern, Vanderbilt, schools that kind of find themselves in no man's land, what they should do, they should floor it and hire stars, do the Colorado method. School like Wake Forest. With what Colorado did with Deion Sanders, brilliant. And you see what Mike Vick getting hired at Norfolk State. And oh my gosh, Mike Vick's looking around at Deion going, wait a second here. Dude's making like $7-8 million a year coaching. I go to Norfolk State and have a couple successful years. People are going to want me. Now, of course, Mike's got some different baggage in that backpack that Deion had, but it's still the same idea. It's still the same effect. So I just look at schools like Wake Forest. They hired a good coach or a decent coach. He was 24-21 at Washington State. That's nice, I guess. Now, why would you want to leave Washington State to go to Wake Forest? They got to get into a major conference, right? I think that's the logic behind that, at least thinking behind that. But good God. If I were Wake Forest, I'd have begged somebody like, I'm trying to think of quarterbacks or people that just retired in the last few years. I'd have begged a guy like Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, somebody like that to come coach. Well, you run the risk. Yeah, you do run the risk. But schools like Tennessee, schools like Florida, they can't risk hiring somebody that has no experience. Schools like Wake Forest can. Just like Colorado had to take a chance. Colorado had been mediocre, 1 9-win season in 18 years, something like that. They had to go for it, and they did, and it worked. Deion's been a success. Been a success. And Mike Vick seeing this, and they're going to start to see this too, and it's, a rising tide. A rising tide raises all ships. And look, HBCUs, what Deion did in Jackson, and then all of a sudden you see Norfolk with Mike Vick. It's a good route to go. You go and you build your pedigree and you work your way up. Jim Harbaugh did this, not HBCU, but what was it, San Diego? is where he started. I mean, he worked his way up the ladder there. So I just sit here and I look at this and I say to myself, from a Wake Forest perspective, if I were a school, and Clark Lees did a nice job at Vanderbilt, but if I were Vanderbilt, when that time is done, I'd try to find a star. If I were Vanderbilt, I'd beg Jay Cutler to come back and be our head coach. Give me a name. Give me a name. Give me a former player. I don't know if the Kelsey brothers would be interested, but maybe not a bad idea for Cincinnati down the road, right? How do you compete on the big stage? You don't have the money, the cachet. Colorado doesn't have that like other schools in the Big 12. They got Dion. I think it's a good idea. I actually think it's a fantastic idea. The other thing that we were talking about earlier is the portal and, perceived portal problems. I'd look at it from a perspective of what's going on and how upset the likes of Lane Kiffin are, how upset Steve Sarkisian is, other coaches. It's funny they're not upset when the coach at Marshall leaves to take the Southern Miss job and the players quit. That's not a concern when the coach left, but when the players are leaving, it's a concern. But hypocrisy aside, the one thing that I do like about this is it makes us adjust. Yeah, the players, they should be able to leave if they want to, but we've gone to this point where the players were shackled and clamped with their commitments and having to sit out a year. If you wanted to leave the conference, if you wanted to transfer within the conference, you had to sit out too. It was too much, to the point now where it's, you yelled at me, I'm done. Oh, I got benched. I'm done. I don't like it after a week. I'm done. So I've got a solution to this. And first of all, you have to move the portal season out of December. Move that sucker. You can start it once college. You can start it January 2nd. Start it January 2nd if you want. Start it after the bowl games on New Year's Day. Move it out. Then what you do is it's very simple. We talked about this. Politicians have kicked around the idea of like a living wage for Americans, where each American gets $1,000 a month, something like that. You do it for the football players instead, but they got to sign contracts. Sign a 2-year deal. So if you're incoming freshman coming into Florida, you commit to Florida, 2-year deal. What's that 2-year deal get you? Get you a salary, get you this, get you NIL opportunities, but you have to sign a 2-year contract with us. And if you opt out of that contract, which you can, I think keeping toxic people around a situation that they don't want to be in is foolhardy. So after those 2 years, and look, halfway through the next year, you don't want to do it, fine. You can bail. You want to quit. You have to sit out 2 years then. The old rule. See, there's ways to do it. You sign a contract, 2 years, here we go. Teaches perseverance a little bit. At least it keeps you through the arc of this. You're getting paid to do it. And the clutching of the pearls that these guys aren't, employees. They're not employees. This is an arms race that the tens, hundreds of millions of dollars are going to leave you no choice. They'll leave you no choice. But it keeps pointing to this is broken, and off the field it is. And Brent brought up something before he had to leave that I think it's a valid point. Here we are talking about the college football playoff, and portal news is dominating college football. It is. And the NFL does this where it won't let any major stories take place the week of the Super Bowl. Coaching hirings, you're not doing that stuff. Not the week of the Super Bowl. You're not. College football, if they had a commissioner, this would work. But the greedy individuals that run each conference, school presidents, ADs, don't want a commissioner because they don't want to be told what to do. They don't. At the end of the day, athletic directors, presidents don't want to be told what to do. You get a commissioner and a structure and work. Don't be told what to do. Should be allowed to do whatever you want. There's your problem. There's your concern. But then they'll beg Congress and beg the state for help. We need laws. We need rules. You didn't want any. Now you want them because it's not advantageous to you. Okay. It's like the whole thing is defund the police. Keep the police away. No police. Till somebody robs your house. Wait. Yeah, I know, right? So anyway, as we sit here and we look at this, we head into this weekend. I think it's interesting because you see in other sports too, NBA ratings are down like 30%. More talk of things going on off the court than on the court. And look, I can see the algorithms in which you guys consume. My job. I run media properties. I see how you guys consume things. You consume things for, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, 30 seconds off, 30 seconds off, 30 seconds off. The game is no longer the package, the highlights are. Snippets, 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 snippets. Yeah. Yeah, Trace, the flag planting law. Damn stupid. I wasn't on. Trace, thank you so much for bringing that up. That's the damn dumbest thing. You're going to create a felony because your feelings are hurt because your arch rival keeps whipping your butt. Make it a felony that you put a plastic stick in our grass. I think it's ridiculous. And there's ways to do this. If you wanted to solve this, then all right. If you plant a flag, you are suspended the next game and the school loses 3 scholarships. Look, if you wanted to end all this, all you'd have to start doing is taking games away and taking scholarships away. We catch you planting the flag, you lose your next game. Could you imagine in the situation that we saw, whether it was Florida doing it or Michigan doing it or pick Arizona State, right? Did their trident in Arizona. Could you imagine Arizona State players now not being able to play in the college football playoff because of it and losing 3 scholarships? That's what you do. It's like field rushing and storming the court. Take away scholarships, baby. Take away. That solves all this. Hey, if you rush the court in basketball, we lose a scholarship next year. And nobody rushes the court. Thanks for setting that up, Trace. I think there's been some ridiculous things, but a law, a felony. That's why sometimes I don't know. It doesn't really matter if that's a Republican or Democrat in Ohio that did that. I'd love to run against that person, just to run against them, just so I can just rip on them in a debate for 15 minutes. Just to go, you really think the best use of the state of Ohio's resources is to charge 19-year-old men with felonies for putting plastic sticks in grass? Okay. Florida State needs to return the stolen turf from the graveyard. Yeah, that's the other, that pearl clutching too. It's like, how dare you poke a hole in our yard? How dare you poke a hole in our grass? The same grass that the horse took a gigantic crap on 20 minutes ago. How dare you? How dare you plant a flag in our grass? Never mind the horse just deuced on it. Never mind that horse dukes on that thing all the time. No. Integrity of our field. The integrity and the character here at Tallahassee. Dare you put a flag, a plastic stick into our grass? Horse just took a dump on it, but don't you dare desecrate this thing. The flag, it's just funny. It just got so out of control, and I loved it. I loved every minute of the overreaction of that. And, people's feelings were hurt. It was ridiculous. It was. And remember, we saw a little bit of this 20 plus years ago where T.O. scored touchdowns for the 49ers and went and stood in the star. It's the same idea. It was the same concept. He planted himself at that point. But look, Scott Strickland, here, Scott, propose a rule in the SEC. You do it, you lose 3 scholarships. That ends it in a hurry. Ends it like that. There you go. Thanks, Trace, for back. I forgot. I can't believe I didn't bring that up today. It's ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Isn't it funny that a sport that's built on toughness, I'm tougher than you, in the trenches, gridiron, we're going to war. High arsenal, high octane offense, fuel, tanks, toughness, football strong, weight room, steel, iron. Taunting. Oh, he pointed at me. We've been beating the hell out of each other for the last 60 minutes. Sweating, bleeding, cut up, broken arms, broken hands, broken feet, torn ACLs. but he pointed at me. How dare he point at me taunting? 15-yard penalty. He put a stick in the ground. Oh, my God, felony. Big tough football, but there you go. All right, need to thank everybody involved. I know Shane O'Mac will be back tomorrow. I know we got the Gators. A big lineup. Big lineup for you on our station tomorrow, ESPN Gainesville, 98.1 FM, 850 AM, WRUF, and also 103.7 HD2. Something I forget to tell you guys every now and then because it just slips my mind. We have an HD2 signal, 100,000 watts, get all the way up to Jacksonville, almost all the way down to Tampa. It's a monster. If you have an HD2 radio in your car, which pretty much every car in the last 5 years has it there, just get to 103.7 HD2, slide it, and you can get us in all sorts of different directions. And on top of that, we have Gator football tomorrow, 12:30. Tulane, of course, will have the game. Steve Russell will still have his post-game show. That remains. And after that, we got Notre Dame and Indiana, men's and women's basketball, and then college football playoff all day Saturday. My brain's fried for Sunday. Can't remember what NFL game we're carrying at noon. Bucks and Cowboys Sunday night. It'll be a fun few days coming up here, at least in Gainesville. Again, more college football games. We carry more games on our side. I had somebody send me an email complaining last night. I frequently was upset about something about the station. I'm like, dude, carrying 40 or 30 bowl games and 20 NFL games, and we got Gator basketball. But what do you want? Well, I want this game instead of that game. Well, okay, I guess. I mean, you try to go to Pizza Hut and order a taco, see what happens. I mean, there you go. All right, Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy New Year. Gators win, Gators cover. I say 31-13 tomorrow. We went through this. I like all four home teams to win in the college football playoff. Penn State doesn't cover, and Ohio State doesn't cover, but I like all four home teams to win. Notre Dame will cover, and Texas will cover. So there you go, Notre Dame. All that. Florida wins 31-13. They cover the 12.5. There you go. For Zach Rothrock, Brent Beaird, Shane O'Mac, Freddie Wiebe, the entire crew, everybody have a Merry Christmas. Happy holiday. I know Shane will be back tomorrow. Take care. Until then, Seth Harp for Brent Beaird, everybody involved. This has been a Thursday, December 19th edition of PodUp with Matthews in the Morning.